Welcome to the I Create Daily podcast. I'm Leora Alderson.
And I'm Devani Alderson. We're your co-hosts on this journey of creativity and productivity.
I Create Daily is for artists in every genre of creating, from musicians to writers, crafters to inventors, bloggers to entrepreneurs. I Create Daily is a movement for creators serious about your art.
If you're into creating anything, this podcast is definitely for you. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey. Hello and welcome to another episode of the I Create Daily podcast, a movement for creators serious about their work. And today we're doing a coffee break and the topic is compare and despair. I did not say who I was. I'm Devani.
and I'm Leora. So we've been talking about this concept of focusing on your growth relative to you and not relative to someone else. And I know it's obvious and it's common sense, and we hear about this and we know this intelligently, just commonsensically. We know that there are always going to be those who are ahead of us, and always there will be those who haven't yet achieved our level of growth in whatever endeavor it may be, and everything in between. But in today's world of social media and the photo shoots and some of which
Photoshop.
May or may not be Photoshop, right, some of which so I was going to say may or may not be real. It's easy to kind of get caught up in assuming that what we see is as it is. Or if you're a creative artist, like for instance, we just ran the iArt Daily Intuitive Art Challenge for the I Create Daily for Creators Facebook community. And there were people of all ranges of ability participating. Those who were just starting, in fact, there were those who were actually more writers, poets, who were so inspired by what they were seeing that they decided that they wanted to try and get into visual arts. And so then naturally what they were creating was not going to be necessarily as good, in air quotes, as the next person, but it's good relative to you and where you are in your journey. And that's the point. And
it can be intimidating in today's world to figure out how to make your footprint, kind of your digital footprint, when there's so much amazing art out there to look at and see, and then sort of looking at your own I don't know if this is the quality that other people want to look at, or I don't know if this is the type of blog post that people would really want to read. But it's really about putting it out there anyway. We listened to a Seth Godin interview with Chase Jarvis, and they were talking about, they lightly touched on a similar topic of it's really about showing up and putting your work out despite what you might feel internally, despite how you might feel internally about your work. And it's less about spending so much time perfecting it and more about spending time making it, releasing it, and improving on the next iteration of it. And in fact, we have a recent example of that where we published an Idea Tools article. You wrote it, we read it, we emailed it out, and then the next day you were like, I want to add so much more to this, and then you wrote more, and it was like, putting the first iteration out was fine, and we could have just left it, but we could also just go back and improve it. And we don't have to make it such a big deal that, it wasn't perfect the first time it was released, but we can improve on it.
And we have, as a writer and editor, and especially, writers and editors know that you shouldn't be editing your own work, as the final edit, but just that's where we are right now. We're still editing our own work, which means that there are always still going to be something missed. And artists of all kinds, we go back to what we've written or what we've painted or created or photos we've taken, whatever it may be, and we see that we tend to see what's wrong, not because we're being, maybe because we're being self-critical, but also that's part of how we improve. By looking at what's wrong with this picture, part of the thing with artists is that's our plight in life, is to improve upon things. Certainly that's the way it is for entrepreneurs. So many businesses that come up, and some of the most successful ones are those who were people trying to solve a problem for themselves and or for others that they saw in society that something it could be improved on, and so they did. And so that's the thing with,
and just before sometimes with visual art, whether it's photography or video or painting or any sort of visual art, there's not like an industry of editors necessarily, especially for painting. There are editors for photos and videos and stuff, but for painting and creating those types of visual arts, there's not a field of like, I'm an editor for a painter, you know? And so it can be harder to receive external feedback because nobody else really knows the vision you're trying to bring to life. So you're the only one who knows that maybe it wasn't up to your personal standard.
Yeah.
And so if you're the only one who knows that, it can be hard to balance this. I want to improve, but also I don't want to beat myself up all the time.
Yeah. And you just get your work out there. So many artists have ended up, you know, basically delaying their own progress by delaying getting their work out into the world. And so, you know, like Dave, I'm glad you mentioned that article. The article is titled Ideation Tools. So you can go to icreatedaily.com/ideation-tools, and you'll see the article that she's talking about. And yeah, it's like, so I actually edited it. It wasn't even just written. It was edited from having written it about a year ago. And I saw it and was like, oh, this is really not good. And so I really need to work on it. And it was one of those that if you've ever written something that just wasn't working out, or painted something, then you just kept trying to fix it in a way, and yet you didn't have a clear view of how to do it. And part of how that came about is, since it is that we've learned about how when you write articles and you name them, you have to use keywords that people are actually searching. And so sometimes you can get in trouble trying to use a keyword and then craft your idea to that keyword, rather than being able to write something and then hope that there's a natural keyword that people are naturally searching. And so the concept, we'll link to those other podcasts and articles we have done on SEO. But it's important for business owners, for entrepreneurs, for writers, for artists to think, when it is that you're writing something and putting it out into the world, what is it that people are searching for in this topic? You know, so is somebody already searching for this topic? Because if it is that you're writing to get your work out into the world, you want it to be found. And in order for it to be found in the crowded world of Google, kind of think of it like, you know, Google is the street corner, the main intersection of the world, essentially, and they have, you know, all the street fronts or storefronts or all the streets. And so you want to make sure that yours gets seen. It's like your billboard in the busy traffic, you know, traffic way of Google. So anyway, that's what happened originally with that article. It's like, okay, this keyword is something we should shoot for ideation tools, because it's actually something we might be able to rank for as a younger, smaller site. And it was then it kind of became forced. And so it didn't work out so well. And then when I read it a year later, I could so clearly see that. And then so I tried to work with editing, and it just wasn't really that coming together. We wanted to get it out. We had a deadline to meet because we set, you know, this goal of this commitment to basically publish something new each day, send a new email out to our group as well as to our Facebook group, to our email list and Facebook group each day. So we did it. Devani read the article, and then afterwards, when I was tuning into it, listening to her audio article, and then also going back and adding a few touches, it's like, there's so much more that needs to be done to this. So it went from being something like maybe 1,400 word article, and it ended up at like 3,600 words, and so much more added to it. And even then, like now I'm looking back at it, so it has it has like almost 3 components to it. And I realized that we can go back in and break it out. So maybe this time next year, we'll go back in and break that into like 3 different articles. And part of why I'm elaborating on this is because if there's anyone here with their own website, then this actually may be helpful to you. And that is that, you know, don't assume like because you put an article out that it can't continue to be honed. In fact, if you already have a good bit of content on your website, Google actually favors that you go in and improve and update and hone your existing article and content.
And it's a great way to practice writing and publishing and releasing work and then going back and editing, because it's so much harder to revise and reprint a book. It's so much harder to revise and redo a video. It's so much harder to revise and redo paintings. For me, I'm sure if you're a painter, you can probably figure that out fairly easily if you're a practice painter. But I know for me, redoing an entire painting is like, when you're not a professional painter, is just not fun. But with article writing and having the Hobbit is what I was about to say. Having the habit of publishing articles on the internet.
Hobbits running around.
We must. Having the habit of publishing an article online not only helps you get over the fear of publishing things that are not necessarily up to standards, but also allows you to practice and hone your skills and sort of learn your own voice, learn your own style, improve on it, reflect on it, reiterate, iterate. The process of honing and developing your craft of writing, and before even doing any published work, and also just building an audience, which can be its own whole other coffee break, but it really does help. And it's great. It's cool that we're talking about this because we're also doing a writer's challenge in March. And so all of this is just about, if you join any challenges, whether it's ours or anybody else's, don't compare your work to other people doing it. Challenges are supposed to be like me versus me. Like, was I better than did I show up? Did I show up every day to do this thing? And did I improve a little bit each day? Just a little bit. And those incremental changes and growth adds up over time. And then also just learning to be okay publishing your work. Yeah,
definitely. So another example of something we did actually publish, that after which it was like, it was just never what the original vision was. And so our very first journal, which was not a part of the I Create Daily brand at the time, was the idea was to gather wisdom from the community for our gardening site. We have gardensall.com as one of the websites in our family portfolio of websites based on interests that we have in our family. And my husband Coleman is the primary gardener, and so we have the website and Facebook page, as well as a Facebook group, Planting for Retirement. And should you be interested in that, Planting for Retirement on Facebook. So anyway, we created a journal based on, it was another one of my ideas. We created a journal based on the concept of, so many gardeners had such wonderful things to say. Like, we would share a meme or a quote or someone, and people would have and say some of their own wisdoms of things that they had gleaned from the garden, from nature. This particular one was, "Nature is the best classroom," was the quote. And then so many people came in and chimed in and, made comments about, from their own experience, about the truth of that.
Yeah, it went super viral, and we didn't really anticipate that at all. We were just sharing like, "Nature is the best classroom." That was literally our quote. Yeah. And we put the post up there, and everybody was like, "Oh my gosh, that's so true," and then sharing their wisdom. Yeah. So then my brilliant idea was that, okay, well, wow, this is like, we need to, grab these quotes, scrape the quotes from the people who have left them, and, like the ones that perhaps are most relatable, and put it in the journal. And so my first mistake was to think that was easy, and it wasn't. And as you know, if you've done much on Facebook, that the comments and the replies can get embedded. So you have to keep on, when you have literally hundreds of thousands of, or tens of thousands of comments, in this case, there were lots and lots of areas and sections to unveil, to unembed, in order to discover the quotes. And then you had to sort of edit some of the people's stuff because they didn't necessarily write the thought concisely, and yet it was still a good thought.
Exactly. And so then it all had to be edited. It all had to be scraped from Facebook, put into a document, and then edited along with their name. So then the next mistake we made is we should have put that behind an opt-in wall, what's known as, where you put your email and you then click and then you get access. And the reason for that, like, if you get irritated with doing that for various things that you need to, that you might be interested in, try not to get too annoyed at that, because it really does serve a good purpose. Not only is it helping the company or brand or artists or creators grow their list so that they can reach the people who are interested in what they're doing, but in this case, it was a total mistake not to, because we had to try and go back one by one for the people whose quotes we used, and
like 3 months after we had put that original post out, we had to go hunt all the people.
Just send them a Facebook message to let them know whether their quote was in the journal, because we thought, okay, I don't know, hundreds of people have these quotes, and now they would be glad to buy. At the very least, the people who are in the book would buy the book, right? Would buy the journal.
And we had probably like 150 maybe that we used from the thousands of submissions.
It was, I forget exactly how many pages, but let's say it was 150 quotes. Well, guess what? So the surprising thing is you can't just click as a page meaning a business listing on Facebook as opposed to a personal profile. It's called a business page. You can't just click on the person's name and send them a message. You have to see it.
You can now, but back in early 2017, late 2016, it was barely emerging as an option, and our page didn't have it yet. And so it was like painstaking.
Months we spent, or weeks and weeks of trying to reach these people to let them know. And I would say we might have actually gotten through to even 3% of the people whose quotes are actually in the book. We couldn't reach them. The message wasn't getting through, or else it was getting hidden in those others folders kind of thing. Or they just assumed it was spam, and so they didn't reply. So it's like, okay, that's a lesson. Your lesson after lesson after lesson, and then we printed it. So it was our first journal, and it looked beautiful digitally. And then when it got printed, the watermarked pages, it's supposed to be a journal, and it has beautiful flower watermark pages, as well as some colorful memes with the quotes that they created, as well as the written quotes. So text quotes and meme quotes and watermark pages. Well, when you printed it, the watermark pages was more pronounced than in the digital version, or at least than I perceived it in the digital version, which means that there was less space on the pages to write.
And to see clearly what you were writing anyway.
So it's like, okay, so now we've got all those journals. We've got, the boxes of journals to sell that we paid for. So it's like, okay, those are always painful lessons. And so now those are being sold on Amazon for half the retail price that it was, which means that basically it was already being sold. It was $22 a journal cost by the time we got it all done, and we're selling them now for $11 a journal, just until the inventory is gone, before we redo it in a better way, applying all the lessons we've learned. So I've gotten a little bit off track from our original topic, but in a way, compare and despair, that was certainly a despair lesson relative to something that we did that wasn't up to even our standards. And yet, what do? You still, it still has some value, so you still sell it.
And that's part of the creator entrepreneur journey. As you try something, it doesn't work, and your life isn't over because it didn't work.
Right.
It certainly feels over at the time. You're just like, oh my gosh, why?
Yeah.
Why did this happen? And another thing is, like, when you're a brand new artist and you're trying, whether that's writing or whatever you're doing, and you're trying things out. I heard, who was it? J.K. Rowling. So we were watching a video about her and just like her tips for people. She was saying that it's okay in the beginning, while you're developing your style and honing your skills, to imitate people that you like. Like, that's okay. You can do that. And because you're learning. And I think there's in the compare process, is there's several levels of comparison. There's comparison of the early stages where you're just like, I really like this person, so let me see if I can write an essay in a similar style to how Stephen Pressfield writes a blog post. And that's part of the learning process. So that's the side of comparing and learning. But then there's the comparing and despairing, where you're trying to create something really original and cool. And then you go online and you go look at other, universe photos, or you look at other really cool watercolor flowers, and you're like, oh no, but mine's not like that, so it just sucks. So that side of comparing is the negative non-growth side. Yeah, and don't ever say this, and that is, don't say, my art will never be as good as that, or my flowers will never be as good as it, or I could never do that. Because if it's something you aspire to, you will and you can, if you practice over time with diligence. And then, it's the thing about focusing on your growth relative to you is not just for art, it's for life. It is a life lesson. So yeah, it's and in particular with this social media era of trying to impress others and have these personas and these Instagram photos and what have you, just being real and yourself and authentic, who you are, as you are, in the end, especially if you're a creator building a brand or an entrepreneur building a business, that speaks to people, because you want to attract the people who are more like you anyway, relative to those who will enjoy your message, enjoy your work, enjoy your art, your writing, your business endeavor, whatever it may be. So just when it comes to facade or persona, don't worry about presenting the perfect side of you to the world, because none of us have that.
anyway, you know, and we all have just like sharing with you guys here about our flops, you know, between the article and the journal and what have you. And, you know, so I used to also look at these things as, oh my gosh, I'm not going to do it again, because, you know, it's impacting, it's stressful to feel like you failed at something, but then you just, okay, let it roll off like water on the duck's back. It's like the Hal Elrod recommended method from the Cutco training, which we'll link to that article here. And the concept is, you know, 5 minutes, basically 5 minutes to be frustrated, angry, cry, whatever, scream, but then get over it and move on and do what you can do to make a difference. There's a quote, Devani, that's kind of connected to this. Would you like to share?
Sure. So the quote is, there are two types of people who will tell you that you cannot make a difference in this world. Those who are afraid to try, and those who are afraid you will succeed. And that's by Ray Goforth.
Go forth. So don't hang out with those types of people. Hang out with the kind of people who are encouraging you to do the work that you want to do in the world, be who you want to be in the world, and to help you to do more of that. You mentioned the writing, before we let them go, you mentioned the writing challenge, and you mentioned March. So if you're listening to or watching this after March of 2019, you can still go and sign up to be notified for future challenges. So just go to the icreatedaily.com website. And what's the heading, Devani, that they look for?
For the Writer's Challenge, you can just
all the challenges.
It's just at the header. It just says creative challenges in the header of icreatedaily.com. And you can see all the active challenges, the past challenges, the wait list. We just keep it running and updated as we do different challenges.
Yeah. So March of 2019, we'll be doing a writing challenge.
And if you're listening to this before March or during like the first week of March, icreatedaily.com/writing-challenge is how you can sign up for that.
Okay, and so we'd love to see you, and you don't have to already know how to write. I mean, be a writer, in other words, you know, so it's just they're all levels, and even if you have already published books, a lot of people are using challenges like this as sort of like a vehicle, or, you know, almost like an arena within which or a classroom within which to decide to come in and get their work done, essentially, like by being immersed in a community of people who are aspiring to do a similar thing. So yeah, we'd love to see you there. So, and always send us a message, creators@icreatedaily.com. We'd love to hear your thoughts, your comments, how you liked the episode, what you'd like to see more of.
All right.
Okay.
Bye, guys.
Thanks. Bye. Thanks so much for joining us for the I Create Daily podcast. Please let us know what creatives you would like us to interview and what topics you would be interested in hearing more about.
And if you enjoyed this show, please leave a review on iTunes. We value your feedback. We read all the reviews, and it just helps us get the word out on the I Create Daily podcast. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.